Today on Adapt and Respond, I want to talk about the $12 million that Michigan has spent so far on an investigation that has just reached the 6-month mark around Sherrone Moore's firing and what it is that Jenner and Block law firm get paid this money could be still looking into. And, well, the lawyers are always going to make the most money about this. And take a look at what is happening to the college football coaches, head coaches who were fired last year at big-time college football programs who didn't get another head coaching job, or maybe they did. It's a list that includes Hugh Freeze, Tim Beck, Brian Kelly, and, of course, Sherrone Moore. All that is coming up after the bumper. What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. If this is your first time watching Adapt and Respond, well, that's the wrong lower third. Thank you for joining us here. We talk college football year round. If you're into that, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and join the more than 195,000 subscribers to Adapt and Respond college football podcast. You can also find us on Apple and Spotify. Thank you for continuing to watch this show, even though I put up an old lower third because, well, producer's off this late night when I'm recording. Sometimes you just want to get this stuff down on paper and you don't have time for a producer to wake up in the morning. I should probably, wait for the person I'm paying to show up to do this. But that means that every now and again, I'm going to click a button that I shouldn't have. But those of you that have been around with this show since 2019, you've come to expect such things. Do you remember when I would put things up without audio or with bad audio and be like, you know what? That's what I got for today. But it also reminds me just how difficult it has been to build this, and the expectations for it have changed, and you are the reason, right? I make this show as much for the audience as anything else, man. I really love doing this. It's one of the reasons that I think we're talking about Sherrone Moore on June 27th, because we have finally a report that was released by the university, thanks to the great folks at the Detroit Free Press newspaper who had put in the FOIA request to find out just how much money does it cost Michigan to investigate Sherrone Moore. And according to the Detroit Free Press, the tab is now, according to new additional invoices, reaching $12 million. That's after another $280,000 for work that was performed just in the month of May alone. Think about that. $280,000 in billable hours to investigate the University of Michigan athletic program for May alone. Good work if you can get it. What also is unclear, this is from the Detroit Free Press, is what work the law firm performed, and almost the entire invoice had been redacted. While previous invoices were not redacted, they indicated the law firm provided, quote, professional services, end quote, during that time period, reinforced in the document. Again, this is great journalism. This is one of the reasons I really love the Michigan Freedom of Information Act, and I'm always interested in upholding our FOIA rights. All of this is interesting because we know that, from a criminal standpoint, this is settled, right? Sherrone Moore is not going to be anywhere near a college football sideline in 2026 or the foreseeable future, in large part because he pled no contest to lesser charges in March, and in April was sentenced to 18 months probation. After those 18 months, we'll see, right? I'm also looking at this from a civil rights standpoint because, well, we have a Chicago-based attorney who is representing Paige Shriver, not Pam, who's the former university staffer that Moore had a long-time affair with, and whose apartment he forced himself into the day he was fired. This is not great news for, well, the civil actions that might be coming to the University of Michigan, let alone Sherrone Moore. There is an interesting note in this story that I also want to get to before we get off of Sherrone Moore and on to something else. But uh, currently, we're talking about an attorney getting paid $2,850 in billable hours for their quote experienced partners and 975 billable at an hour for our most junior associates, and from $395 to $675 an hour for our paralegal professionals. Um, and that is after they reportedly provided a 15% discount and won't charge for quote computerized legal research expenses. Like, wild, man. The attorneys in this, man, they keep making all of this money. And I'm curious now, especially as we've had the Mike Boynton hire, or I should say interim hire as head coach, with Dusty May electing to leave Michigan to coach the Dallas Mavericks next season. How much of this scrutiny is going to land on Ward Manuel, who seems to be the only holdover from the Harbaugh era all the way? Like, now we're getting Dusty May up out of here just after they won a national championship, or I should say he got himself up out of here, claiming didn't really like where college athletics was heading. And I don't blame him. If you can get a better job, take a better job. You don't want the hassle. You don't want the hassle. Then they make the internal interim hire of Mike Boynton. And we've already had people say, hey, don't make this the one that you thought that it was with Sherrone Moore. And I'm with them on this. These are not the same. It would have been cool to see Sherrone Moore and Mike Boynton as head coaches at Michigan for men's basketball and football for reasons. And if you need to know what those reasons are, look at my face. If you know, you know. But that ain't what we get. What we got is Kyle Whittingham as the head coach for Michigan's football program, and Mike Boynton, who many people believe is more than qualified to be the head coach at Michigan, despite what may or may not have happened for him at Oklahoma State. Michigan is a whole different kettle of fish, man. The resources that they be able to put in, the conference that they play in is just different. And if anybody deserves another run at it, I think it is Mike Boynton. If they decide to go that way, that's cool. But it's also in Ward Manuel's hands again. And while we all think the Kyle Whittingham hire is grade A, myself included, that can change with the win-loss record in 2026. And as we keep looking at Jenner and Block doing this work, I wonder how much of it has to do with Ward Manuel, how much of it has to do with some of the decisions that he made and what the culture of the athletic department was. And what is it now? And is this just going to be Jenner and Block on retainer for the foreseeable future for a Michigan who, oh, by the way, still owes the NCAA a lot of money for fines? Whether or not they'll pay them and when they pay them, we'll see. I thought that was all interesting, and I thought that was all worth pointing out. I do want to pivot from Sherrone Moore, Michigan, and this $12 million that's being paid to lawyers after, well, we know Sherrone Moore's no longer the head coach at Michigan, and or we've seen the criminal procedures carried out. You know, what's he doing now? And buddy over at CBS Sports, Brad Crawford, wrote a really great piece that I thought was interesting about what head coaches are doing or could be doing at the moment. And he's got one great line in here about mapping out a red zone failures for after loss to Ohio State. I don't know what else you're supposed to put there as far as what he's doing, but it's that's a great line. It also brought me back to, who else isn't really working now, right? Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State is really working now, we think. He was in the film room for the college football playoff national championship game. There had been some scuttle of him becoming an on-air play-by-play analyst, right, in the booth. We'll see. I think Mike Gundy would have a lot of fun in that job. Mike Gundy, who loves to hold court, and I think would have a lot of fun being on mic. I think Mike Gundy's actually set up to be a really great in-studio analyst, honestly, because he's got lots of opinions. He's not afraid of them, and he knows ball. Like, that's generally where you want that guy, right? Not necessarily that he would be wasted calling games. I just think that he'd be great in studio on anybody's halftime or pregame show. Hugh Freeze, nobody's really seen or heard about, but apparently he's playing a lot of golf. Hopefully he gets to lower his handicap in between, perhaps coming back to be a head coach, perhaps being an offense coordinator. Mark Stoops who was the head coach at Kentucky, is now special assistant at Texas, a job that was once held by Gary Patterson and at least one Wisconsin head coach, Paul Chryst. Yeah, Paul Chryst. And, who wouldn't want to have another defensive mind over there? Brent Pry, who was the head coach of Virginia Tech, has famously become the defense coordinator for Virginia Tech after 4 seasons with, shall we say, the kind of results to get you fired, right? But it's curious and cool that James Franklin wanted to keep him on, as he had him as a defense coordinator at Penn State before he took that job to be head coach at Virginia Tech. Jay Norvell, who was the head coach at Colorado State, is now the running backs coach at Iowa. Means he gets to go back home. That's his alma mater. He played for Hayden Fry, 82 to 85, and was an MVP on that team during his career. Not too shabby. Billy Napier, head coach at James Madison after being fired as head coach at Florida. I think putting him back in the Sun Belt means bad news for the Sun Belt. I don't expect the Dukes to be great this year. They could be, but I do expect them to be back pushing for the college football playoff very, very soon. Brian Kelly, who just took a job as CBS Sports on-air in-game announcer, is also an unpaid consultant from Memphis and Charles Huff, which I think is interesting. Kelly, I have no doubt, will be a head coach again if that's what he wants. Not unlike Dan Mullen at UNLV, because his record is pretty good at Notre Dame. 34-14 with a couple of 10-win seasons and a showing in the national title game. Good football coach. LSU turned out to be a bad fit for him. The first and maybe the only bad fit for a head coach at LSU, because it feels like everybody can win at LSU but Brian Kelly. They're going to test that with Lane Kiffin. James Franklin, who was head coach at number 2 ranked Penn State to start last year, got fired before the season even was halfway over, or just past halfway over, and became the head coach of Virginia Tech before the month of November was over. That's how badly he wanted to get back in that. Left $40 million in buyout money on the table because he wanted to be a coach again, and he wanted to show everybody what kind of a coach he is. More power to you. Trent Dilfer was the head coach at UAB. Before that, was the head coach at Lipscomb Academy. He left that job 2022 to go to Alabama Birmingham. They fired him, went back to Lipscomb, where he's been really, really good. 44-10 over a 4-year stretch. Whatever he was doing working at Lipscomb just didn't work long-term at UAB. I hope that he has a great time coaching him up at Lipscomb Academy. Trent Bray, who was the head coach at Oregon State, is now defensive coordinator at Washington State. Tim Beck, who was the head coach at Coastal Carolina, is now the offensive coordinator for Bryant Hartline at South Florida. Brian Hartline's in a really interesting spot. I think Michael Van Buren can absolutely spin it and play. But I just wanted to do a shorter segment today. Talk a little bit about Sherrone Moore and hear what you think. Which one of these hires do you think is kind of out of left field? And what do you think about the University of Michigan continue to spend this much money on investigating itself?